So once again, good day everyone. I am Glycevanti Senyo and I'm going to tackle about the ecosystem services. But first, let us define what is ecosystem. So I know nga na may mga ideas ani since it was already tackled. So what is an ecosystem by the way? So I'll give you a short discussion about it. So, an ecosystem is the complete system formed by the interaction of living organisms and their environment. This means that plants, animals, microorganisms, and humans interact with non-living components such as soil, water, air, sunlight, and nutrients to create a functioning natural system. So the concept of an ecosystem is studied through different branches of science like ecology, biology, geology, and meteorology. So these sciences help explain how natural processes work together to support life on Earth. So sa madaling sabi, ang ecosystem is a network of relationship where living and non-living things depend on each other for survival. So, in a forest ecosystem, trees are the dominant organisms. They interact with animals, insects, fungi, bacteria, and environmental factors such as sunlight, rainfall, soil, nutrients. These interactions allow the ecosystem to produce important resources like oxygen, water, food, and wood. So, an ecosystem functions through inputs and outputs. Parehas sa cycle. So, inputs are the resources that enter the ecosystem. These include the sunlight or radiant energy, water from rainfall, or sa Bisaya pa ulan, dayon carbon dioxide or CO2 from the atmosphere, oxygen and nutrients from the soil. So these inputs allow plants to grow through called photosynthesis. Plants absorb carbon dioxide and water and use sunlight to produce energy and biomass. So kung mayroong biomass, it is the total amount of living or once living organisms in a place. So on the other hand, ang outputs are the products that live or are produced by the ecosystem. So these include the oxygen released by the plants, carbon dioxide from the respiration, water movement through rivers and streams, nutrients returned to the soil, wood, and plant materials used by humans and animals. So these processes keep the ecosystem functioning and support many forms of life. So ecosystems develop over time through a process called ecological succession. At first, an area may contain only bare ground with nutrients such as nitrogen, phosphorus, calcium, and potassium that are necessary for plant growth. The first plants to grow are usually pioneer species, such as grasses and small herbaceous plants. So their seeds may arrive through wind, water, or animals. These plants use sunlight, water, and nutrients to grow. As they grow, they absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and store it in their tissues. They also release oxygen back into the air to the air. Over time, larger plants such as trees grow and create shade. This gradually transforms the area into a forest ecosystem. So when plants and animals die, their bodies become organic matter on the ground. Microorganisms such as bacteria, fungi break down those material in a process called decomposition. So this process returns important nutrients to the soil where they can be absorbed again by plant roots. So this continuous recycling of nutrients is essential for maintaining soil fertility and support plant growth. Animals also contribute a nutrient cycle. Herbivores such as deer, rabbits, and moose eat plants and later release nutrients back to the soil through their waste. Birds and animals may also spread seeds to new areas, helping plants reproduce and expand. So studies have shown that removing trees from the forest ecosystem can significantly affect natural processes. So without trees, water flows more quickly through the soil and streams. More nutrients are washed away from the land. The ecosystem becomes temporarily unbalanced. Over time, as vegetation grows back, the ecosystem gradually restores its balance. So every ecosystem has a carrying capacity, which is the maximum number of organisms it can support over a long period. So for plants, carrying capacity depends on soil fertility, water availability, climate conditions, access to sunlight. As plants grow larger, they compete for these resources. So, this competition limits how many plants can survive in the same area. So, animals food is not same sa plants is not like carrying capacity. So, an ecosystem can only support a certain number of animals based on food availability, shelter and nesting space, water supply. If a population grows too large, it may exceed the ecosystem carrying capacity, leading to source shortages and environmental imbalance. So that is my explanation for the ecosystem. The next is what is ecosystem services. Ecosystem services are the benefits that humans and Earth receive from nature or ecosystems. So these benefits come from forests, oceans, rivers, land, and other natural environments. So sa madaling sabi, ang ecosystem services are the helpful things that nature provides for people and the planet. So, ecosystems provide many important benefits such as food, fruits, fish, crops, fresh water, clean air, climate regulation, pollination of plants, water purification, soil formation, control of pests and diseases. So these services help support human life and keep the planet healthy. So ecosystem services can also be divided into two types, the public goods and the private. So what is a public goods? It is the benefits that everyone can enjoy. Example, the clean air, the clean water, the beautiful landscapes. So, on the other hand, private goods, these are the products that people pay for and consume. For example, the woods, the foods, and other forest products. So there are four main types of ecosystem services. These are the provisioning services, regulating services, supporting services, cultural services. So later on, I will be discussing these services one by one. Now, if you're going to ask me why ecosystem services are important, indeed, it's very important to us in terms of survival and economic development, but people often take them for granted because many of them have no direct price in the market. So because of this, some programs around the world pay landowners to protect forests and ecosystems. So this encourages people to manage land sustainably and protect nature. That will be all for my explanation in the ecosystem services. Now let's move on to the types of ecosystem services. So the first types of ecosystem services is the provisioning services. So Provisioning services are the products and resources that forests provide for humans. So, for example, is wood and fiber. It used for building houses, furniture, tools, and paper. Then the next example is food and medicine. It's the wild fruits, mushrooms, honey, and medicinal plants. And energy, wood used for cooking, heating, and biofuel. It also has water supply, like forest help store, filter, and maintain clean water. So in simple terms is provisioning services are the products or materials that people get directly from ecosystem, especially from the forest. So these are the things that humans use, eat, or consume in everyday life. The next ecosystem services is regulating services. So, sa madaling sabi, itong services na ito are the ways nature controls the environment to support life. So, for examples of regulating services are the number one is carbon sequestration and climate regulation. So, forests absorb carbon dioxide or CO2 from the air and store it in trees and plants. This helps reduce climate change and regulate the Earth's temperature. So the second example is the flood control and erosion control. So tree roots hold the soil together and absorb water, which helps prevent soil erosion, reduce flooding, protect land and communities from damage. Number three example is water purification. So forests help filter and clean water. Plants and soil remove dirt and pollutants before water reaches rivers and lakes, giving people clean water. The last example is pollination. So many plants reproduce through pollination, where pollen is transferred from one flower to another. Animals such as bees, butterflies, birds, bats help pollinate plants and crops like apples, coffee, bananas, pumpkins, etc. So pollination is very important for food production and plant reproduction. So that is my explanation for the regulating services. So the next is the cultural services. So these services are the non-material benefits that people get from ecosystems, especially in the forest. So these benefits improve human well-being, culture, and experiences, not physical products. So sa madaling sabi, cultural services are the emotional, spiritual, and social benefits people receive from nature. So examples of cultural services are the first is recreation and tourism. So forests provide places where people can go hiking, camping, hunt and fish, then enjoy nature trips and ecotourism. And ecotourism, so these activities help people relax and connect with nature. So the next example is the aesthetic value, which is the beauty of nature. No, so forests have beautiful landscapes and scenery that people enjoy viewing. So seeing large trees, mountains, and wildlife can give people a sense of peace, happiness, and inspiration. The next example is the spiritual and religious values. So many cultures and religions consider forests sacred or spiritually important. For example, some ancient cultures used forests for religious rituals. Trees are used in holiday traditions such as Christmas trees. So for the fourth example is cultural identity and heritage. So for many indigenous communities, forests are part of their culture and way of life. So their traditions, stories, and languages are connected to the forest environment. The last example is the knowledge and education. So forests help people learn about nature. Local communities often develop knowledge about plants, animals, and the ecosystem through generation of experience. So, this knowledge can even help scientists discover new medicines. So the last types of ecosystem services is the supporting services. So supporting services are the basic natural processes and ecosystems that make all other ecosystem services possible. So without these processes, ecosystems could not function properly. So examples of supporting services is the number one is primary production. So primary production is the energy that plants produce and store as biomass. Plants use energy from the sun to grow and create leaves, roots, stems, flowers, and fruits. So this stored energy becomes food for animals and other organisms in the ecosystem. The next is the photosynthesis. So photosynthesis is the process where plants use sunlight combine water and carbon dioxide, produce food or energy for growth, release oxygen into the air. Oxygen produced by photosynthesis is essential for most life on Earth. The next example is the nutrient cycling. So nutrient cycling is the movement and reuse of important nutrients such as nitrogen, calcium, potassium. When plants and animals die, I mean, so when plants and animals die, they decompose and return nutrients to the soil. So as I've mentioned ganina, so these nutrients are then reused by new plants. So the next example is water cycle. So the water cycle moves water through the environment. So water enters ecosystem through rain and moves through soil, plants, rivers, and streams. Plants also release water into the air through evapotranspiration. So this cycle helps transport nutrients and support plant growth. The last example is soil formation. So soil formation happens when rocks slowly break down and mix with decomposed plant and animal material. So over many years, this creates fertile soil where plants can grow. So soil also contains many organisms like bacteria, fungi, insects, and etc. So these organisms help break down organic matter and improve soil quality. So that would be all for the types of ecosystem services. So let me recap. It is the first one is the provisioning services, the regulating services, the cultural services, and the supporting services. Now let's move on to the trade-offs when managing for different forest ecosystem services. So a trade-off happens when improving or using one ecosystem service causes the reduction or loss of another service. This is a common challenge when managing forests. So sa madaling sabi, ang trade-off means gaining one benefit from the forest but losing another benefit at the same time. So examples of trade-offs. The first one is cutting trees for wood. So if trees are cut to get wood for houses, furniture, or paper, ay by the way kani siya is nabilong siya sa katong gimension ako ganina sa ecosystem services, which is the provisioning services. So if you cut trees to get wood for houses, furniture, or paper, some other services might decrease, such as carbon storage, wildlife habitat, flood control, water quality, and ecotourism opportunities. However, this loss can sometimes be temporary if new trees grow again. The next example is protecting forests. So, if forests are protected to conserve biodiversity and nature, it can improve services like clean water, carbon storage, flood protection, tourism, and recreation. But it may reduce provisioning services, no? Vice versa lang siya itong sa first nga example. So, it reduces provisioning services such as timber harvesting, food resources from forests. The next example is converting forests to other land uses. So when forests are cleared for agriculture, buildings, or roads, many ecosystem services are lost, including wildlife habitats, pollination, clean air and water, soil protection, cultural and recreational benefits. So, hard surfaces like roads and parking lots also increase water runoff and pollution. So forest managers must decide how to balance different ecosystem services. So that would be all for trade-offs, no? So by the way, I forgot to maghatag og example sa ecosystem. So one of example sa ecosystem diri sa Philippines is the Tubataha Reefs Natural Park. So kani siya is located ni siya in the middle of the Sulu Sea. So kani siya nga ecosystem, it's a marine ecosystem found in the sea. So it includes coral reefs, fish, sea turtles, sharks, sea plants, and algae. So all these living things interact with non-living things like water, sunlight, rocks, which other form of an ecosystem. So I think that would be all for my report. I hope you understand, or I hope you learn something about my discussion. So yeah, I think that would be all, and thank you for listening.